General Hospital spoilers reveal that as the heat of summer descended upon Port Charles, an unexpected announcement rippled through the town, not from the mouths of its conniving characters, but from the real world just beyond the camera lens. Laura Wright, the indomitable force behind Carly, quietly confirmed what many had begun to suspect. She would be stepping away from the canvas for a full 2 months. On the surface, it seemed like a well-deserved summer hiatus, the kind actors take to recharge from relentless schedules. But to those who know General Hospital and its penchant for timing, secrets, and seismic shifts, this was not merely a break, it was the calm before a storm. It was a narrative vacuum that could threaten to collapse the delicate balance of power Carly Spencer had long held together with blood, grit, and steel-eyed resolve. In recent months, Carly had become more than just a pillar in Port Charles. She was the reluctant guardian of Michael's moral compass, the shadow cast over Nina's every misstep. The unspoken threat Drew feared even more than the truth he had buried. She was the only person who dared question the motives of Brennan, her WSB entanglement, who kept more secrets than she was willing to admit. With Willow's recovery still fragile, with Drew's political games edging toward collapse, with Nina's grip on redemption slipping by the day, Carly's absence could not have come at a more dangerous moment. And so the whispers began. Would Carly disappear from town abruptly, with some vague explanation about visiting Jocelyn or taking a solo vacation? Would she suffer an unseen accident, conveniently off-screen, leaving others to manage the chaos in her absence? Or, perhaps most disturbingly, would someone finally succeed in silencing her? In a town where enemies often dress as lovers and allies strike like snakes, the possibilities were endless. Carly had no shortage of enemies, both past and present, and each of them would see her disappearance as a golden opportunity. The effect of her absence would be immediate. Without Carly's calculated defiance, Michael would be vulnerable to Nina's manipulations, especially now that she had begun her subtle campaign to paint herself as the stabilizing maternal force in his life. With Willow emotionally exhausted and still tethered to Drew through a marriage built more on damage control than desire, Michael would begin to question everything. And with Carly gone, who would be there to remind him of who Drew really is? Drew himself, for that matter, would be emboldened. With Carly no longer around to challenge his claims or expose his deeds, he might attempt to consolidate power, politically, personally, and legally. He had already begun floating dangerous ideas about custody and trust, planting seeds in Willow's mind and publicly positioning himself as the hero of the Corinthos legacy. Without Carly to rip down that illusion, it might grow unchecked. Even Curtis, Nina's new reluctant ally in the hunt for Jacinda, would feel the void Carly left behind. For all their disagreements, Carly had always been a reliable skeptic, a sharp blade that cut through emotional noise. Her absence meant Nina's path to emotional manipulation was clearer than ever. And as Tracy quietly circled her prey with secret knowledge about Jacinda's location in Australia, there would be no Carly to intercept, question, or expose. That meant Tracy had an open lane to push Michael further into action, and possibly into disaster. And then, there was Brennan, the charming, dangerous man from the WSB who had begun wrapping Carly into his web with vague promises and warm deception. Was his interest in her genuine, or was she just another mark on a long list of operations? With Carly gone, Brennan's motivations would come under greater scrutiny, and perhaps someone like Jason or Jax might return to Port Charles to fill that vacuum, raising even more questions about loyalty, danger, and unfinished business. But even as the city braces for her departure, fans and residents alike know one thing: Carly never stays gone for long. Her exits are never simple vacations. They are calculated chess moves, sometimes of her own design, sometimes imposed by fate, but always timed for maximum impact. Her return, whenever it comes, is likely to be explosive. Perhaps she'll come back with answers no one was prepared to face. Perhaps she'll discover what Drew and Nina were plotting while she was gone. Perhaps she'll learn that someone close, someone she trusted, allowed her name to be dragged through the mud while they benefited from her silence. And if she returns not as a savior, but as a woman with nothing left to lose, Port Charles may have no idea what kind of firestorm it has just invited. For now, Laura Wright's break from the canvas has created more than a production pause. It has cracked open a void where tension, betrayal, and reckoning can thrive. And as new alliances form and old betrayals come to light, the absence of Carly Spencer is not just a gap, it is a warning. Something is coming. The game is changing. And when she returns, she may no longer be playing by the old rules. Carly's exit from Port Charles, though framed as a summer hiatus, has rapidly become one of the most disruptive shifts the town has faced in recent memory. Her departure did not arrive in a blaze of glory. Nor was it accompanied by a dramatic scandal, yet its impact has spread like a silent wildfire, consuming everything in its path. What many initially assumed was simply Laura Wright stepping away for a much-deserved summer break has evolved into something far more psychologically and politically complex. For within the quiet lies of absence, power is being redistributed, alliances are cracking, and buried agendas are clawing their way to the surface. Carly had been the steady fulcrum balancing the chaotic axis between Michael, Sonny, Drew, and Nina, and without her active presence, that axis is now dangerously off-kilter. Her exit came on the heels of her monumental efforts to help Michael regain custody of his children, expose Drew's manipulations, and re-establish stability within the fractured Corinthos legacy. Having achieved those short-term objectives, Carly did not vanish out of fatigue, she vanished because she saw something coming, something darker, more insidious. Something that could not be countered with immediate reaction but had to be anticipated with strategic withdrawal and long-form vision. This was not Carly stepping away. This was Carly stepping above the storm. But even in her absence, the shadow she cast remains inescapable. Michael, freshly re-entrenched as a force to be reckoned with after reclaiming his role as father and protector, is now grappling with a complicated transformation. Without Carly as a buffer, he must now confront the emotional debris of what Drew, Willow, and Nina left in their wake. His growing closeness to Sasha, once unthinkable, now seems like a natural result of shared trauma and mutual loss. They are bonded by grief, but also by the kind of clarity that only suffering brings. And it is this shared clarity that is beginning to redefine Michael's priorities. Carly's influence lingers in his every decision, even as he begins to act without her direct guidance. Meanwhile, Nina is spiraling again. Her long-standing obsession with control and vindication is only exacerbated by Carly's absence. She wrongly believes that without Carly, she can repair her broken bond with Willow and reinsert herself into Michael's family unit. But she fails to realize that Carly's absence has actually intensified Willow's distrust and deepened her dependence on Michael, not opened the door for Nina's redemption. Nina is blind to the fact that Carly's legacy isn't about her presence, but about what she has already planted in the minds and hearts of those she's touched. Across town, Drew is unraveling with terrifying speed. Publicly humiliated, privately enraged, and increasingly isolated, he's now consumed by a desire to reclaim his influence, no matter the cost. With Tracy having exposed his secret manipulations, and with Jason now taking a more prominent protective role in Michael's life, Drew is cornered in a way he's never experienced. His darker impulses, once cloaked in righteousness, are now surfacing. He's begun quietly applying pressure on Portia, seeking leverage through secrets she's long buried. He's planting seeds of doubt in the minds of those around him and waiting for them to sprout into fear and compliance. Carly would have countered that instinctively, but without her, his tactics are evolving unchecked. Yet Drew fails to see that every step he takes toward revenge is also a step deeper into his own eventual implosion. Carly has already won the war he thinks he's still fighting. He just hasn't realized it yet. The landscape without Carly has become a psychological battleground. Curtis is straddling the line between justice and temptation, caught between the pain Portia caused him and the lingering emotions he still carries for Jordan. Christina, once content to play a supporting role in the Corinthos narrative, is becoming bolder, more cunning, and potentially more dangerous. Especially as her resentment toward Molly and her own secrets begin to fester beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Tracy is not resting. Sensing an opportunity, She's begun laying the groundwork for a power alliance that could permanently cripple Drew's standing in Port Charles. With Carly out of the picture, Tracy sees no reason to hold back. She is moving pieces around the board with brutal precision, and in the process, setting up a potential showdown that could shatter the Quartermaine family from within. But all of this, all the chaos, the power grabs, the shifting allegiances, is built on a single false assumption, that Carly is done. She is not. She is watching. Listening. Waiting. From wherever she is. She's taking in every consequence her absence has triggered. And she is preparing. Because Carly doesn't just return. Carly orchestrates a comeback. One that's timed, calculated, and guaranteed to detonate upon arrival. And when she does return, it will not be with the intention of picking up where she left off. No, this Carly will be refined, redefined, and ready to reshape Port Charles on her terms. She will not be a reactionary player in someone else's drama. She will be the drama. And by the time her feet touch the ground in Port Charles again, the storm that followed her departure will seem like a gentle breeze compared to the reckoning she brings. So while Port Charles trembles under the weight of her absence, while Nina schemes, Drew lashes out, Sasha mourns, Michael rebuilds, and Tracy sharpens her blade, Carly is crafting the next chapter. One where she does not merely survive the madness but controls it. Because in a town where people believe power is inherited or stolen, Carly knows the truth. Real power is claimed in silence, sharpened in solitude, and returned in fire. And she is returning. Not as the woman they remember, but as the force they never saw coming. The murder weapon was not what anyone expected. It wasn't a gun, a knife, or a carefully planted toxin, it was a wrench. A simple, solid steel wrench, once given as a light-hearted gift from Carly to Brennan, now stained with blood and central to the most shocking murder investigation Port Charles had seen in months. This small, seemingly insignificant object had transformed into a symbol of betrayal, accusation, and the slow unraveling of trust. Dragging Carly and Brennan into a nightmarish spotlight neither of them could have imagined. What began as a private moment between two people, Carly gifting Brennan a commemorative wrench as a tongue-in-cheek nod to his past as a fixer, now became the centerpiece of an escalating media frenzy. Legal scrutiny, and emotional upheaval that cast doubt over everything they had built. The moment the authorities confirmed that the murder weapon used in a high-profile killing was indeed the very same wrench Carly had given Brennan, the narrative shifted violently. Suddenly, Carly wasn't just a concerned citizen or a grieving bystander, she was a person of interest. The wrench, engraved with Brennan's initials and a date that now marked infamy, became undeniable proof of connection. And in a town like Port Charles, where everyone has secrets and every gift has a price, that connection was enough to invite suspicion, innuendo, and outright blame. Carly, who had always managed to walk the line between danger and control, now found herself teetering on the edge, accused not of murder, but of enabling it. For Brennan, the consequences were even more severe. As a former WSB agent with a shadowy history and a reputation built on covert operations, the revelation struck hard. His credibility plummeted overnight. Former allies turned distant. Enemies grew emboldened. Port Charles had long questioned his intentions, but now the city seemed to have an answer. Brennan wasn't just dangerous, he was deadly. The wrench, once displayed proudly in his apartment, had been missing for days before the murder, a detail he failed to mention until it was too late. That omission, coupled with his background, made him the perfect suspect. But Brennan knew the truth. He didn't kill anyone. The wrench had been stolen, repurposed, used to frame him, or worse, to send a message. And that message was being heard loud and clear by Carly. The implications of this twisted turn of fate weighed heavily on her. She knew Brennan had secrets, she'd accepted that. But this was different. This wasn't about classified information or WSB politics. This was personal. Someone wanted to dismantle her world. And they were starting with the very man she'd chosen to trust. The wrench wasn't just a murder weapon, it was a metaphor, a brutal reminder that anything, no matter how innocent, could be twisted into something lethal in the wrong hands. Carly, haunted by the thought that her well-meaning gift might have led to someone's death, began to spiral. She questioned every decision, every instinct. Was this her fault? Did her presence in Brennan's life bring this upon them both? As the investigation deepened, so did the fractures in their relationship. The pressure cooker of suspicion, media frenzy, and community judgment forced them into isolation. Carly, once a pillar of strength in Port Charles, found herself alienated, doubted, and vulnerable. Friends began to pull back. Even Michael, though loyal, worried about the public fallout and what it meant for his family's reputation. Drew, sensing an opportunity, quietly sowed doubt among those closest to Carly, pushing the narrative that her recklessness had finally caught up with her. And Brennan, for all his composure, was beginning to crack. The calm, calculating agent who once handled life-or-death scenarios without blinking was now a man on the verge, obsessed with uncovering who had turned his life into a crime scene. What made matters worse was that this wasn't an isolated incident. This murder was part of a larger pattern, one Carly and Brennan had yet to fully recognize. The wrench was just the beginning. Over the following days, other clues emerged, each pointing toward a coordinated effort to dismantle them both, piece by piece. Surveillance footage was missing. Witnesses vanished. A journalist who began investigating the case was found dead under suspicious circumstances. Someone was orchestrating a campaign not just to destroy Brennan, but to psychologically destroy Carly as well. And with every new revelation, the walls closed in tighter. The psychological toll was immense. Carly began suffering from insomnia, paranoia, and flashbacks. The thought that someone could take something as simple and sincere as a gift and twist it into an act of evil consumed her. She avoided her own kitchen, stared blankly at her reflection, and flinched at every unexpected noise. Brennan, meanwhile, began withdrawing, conducting his own shadow investigation that led him down increasingly dangerous paths, old contacts, forgotten enemies, and files long thought sealed. He believed the answer lay somewhere in his WSB past, but that meant confronting a darkness he had long tried to forget. As the two became more isolated, their bond both strengthened and frayed. They were the only ones who truly understood the scope of what was happening, yet the constant stress, the fear of betrayal, and the unrelenting public scrutiny made intimacy impossible. Their conversations grew clipped, their tempers short, and their trust fragile. Still, they held on, not out of romance, but out of mutual survival. Because they knew the truth, if they fell apart now, whoever had set this in motion would win. Meanwhile, Port Charles watched with a mix of fascination and unease. The scandal dominated headlines, gossip columns, and dinner table conversations. Some rallied behind Carly, remembering her past resilience and believing in her innocence. Others whispered about poetic justice, suggesting that perhaps Carly's long history of calculated moves had finally caught up to her. The truth, however, remained elusive. For all the theories, for all the speculation, no one could answer the core question: who used the wrench, and why? Answers would come, but only after more damage had been done. More relationships would fracture. More secrets would surface. And Carly would be forced to make the most painful decision of her life, whether to protect Brennan at all costs, or to save herself by stepping away. In the end, the wrench became more than a murder weapon. It became a symbol of how far the darkness in Port Charles had spread. It proved that no one, not even Carly, could escape the consequences of trust misplaced. And as the town braced for the next revelation, one thing became clear: this was no longer just a murder case. This was a reckoning. Carly's arrest sent shockwaves through Port Charles in a way that no one could have foreseen. It wasn't just about a woman being taken into custody, it was about a legacy collapsing. Once the unwavering matriarch of her family and a fierce protector of those she loved, Carly now found herself handcuffed, photographed, and paraded through the courthouse as the press clamored for answers. Her fall from grace wasn't a moment, it was a slow-motion disaster, unfolding publicly and mercilessly. The charges tied directly to the wrench, the one she had gifted Brennan, now identified as the murder weapon, became the tipping point. While she wasn't accused of the murder itself, she was being charged with obstruction, destruction of evidence, and aiding a known suspect. To the public, and perhaps even the justice system, Carly had crossed a line she could never uncross. Inside the courtroom, the proceedings felt like a formality. The prosecution painted a picture of a woman who thought she was untouchable. Someone who used charm and influence to shield herself and her lover from accountability. They referenced her long history of inserting herself into dangerous situations and turning a blind eye to consequences. They spoke of how she had been warned repeatedly but continued to associate with Brennan, despite knowing the risks. The wrench, engraved and traceable, was only part of the evidence. There were texts, deleted voicemails, surveillance gaps, and all of it pointed to someone who either knew more than she admitted or was willfully blind. And that blindness was, in their view, criminal. The weight of it all was unbearable. Michael, stunned and furious, demanded answers while trying to shield Wiley and Amelia from the media storm. Christina, devastated, struggled to reconcile the woman she loved as family with the accusations being leveled in court. Drew, opportunistic as ever, seized the moment to regain credibility, painting himself as a victim of Carly's recklessness and spinning the narrative that she had been compromised by her relationship with Brennan. Even Sonny, though visibly shaken, couldn't do much. The optics of defending Carly publicly, especially while under his own scrutiny, were too dangerous. He had enemies watching, waiting for a sign of weakness. And this? This was a catastrophe. But the emotional fallout extended far beyond legal ramifications. Carly's incarceration effectively confirmed what many had only speculated. Her departure from Port Charles was not just a temporary reprieve or a summer break, it was the consequence of a full-blown scandal. And with that confirmation came a new kind of silence. One filled with grief, betrayal, and unanswered questions. Port Charles buzzed with theories. Was Carly truly guilty? Was she protecting Brennan? Was someone framing her? And most haunting of all, did she know more than she was ever willing to admit? Inside her cell, Carly remained quiet, refusing to issue statements or interviews. She requested no special treatment, spoke only to her lawyer, and declined visits from even her closest allies. This silence, strategic or sorrowful, only fueled the firestorm. The woman who once dominated boardrooms and family meetings with sheer will was now a ghost in orange, her voice absent from the drama she once commanded. And still, Port Charles couldn't stop talking about her. Some speculated that Carly's imprisonment was only the beginning. If Brennan resurfaced, he could either exonerate her, or damn her further. If new evidence appeared, the case could pivot. And if, as some suspected, Carly was covering for someone else entirely, then the true storm had yet to come. The wrench was only the first domino. The murder, the arrest, the trial, they were symptoms of something deeper. A rot. A vendetta. A carefully orchestrated plot to dismantle not just Carly, but everyone connected to her. As for Carly, the weight of betrayal, whether her own or someone else's, began to take its toll. The walls of her cell weren't just physical, they were emotional. Guilt, fear, and grief clawed at her every second. She had always been the one to fix things, to fight her way out, to protect her family no matter the cost. But now, there was no quick fix. There was no deal to make, no one to manipulate. No path forward but to endure. And so she waited, quietly, fiercely, broken but unbowed. Because even in the darkest moment of her life, Carly knew one truth above all others. Port Charles doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. But sometimes, just sometimes, it gives people the chance to rise again. Whether Carly would be one of those people, only time would tell.